I'm going to be talking about Hitler and things he did, like his early life, his political stuff, and whatnot. But really, that's what I will be talking about. Hitler, he was interesting person. He was born on April 20th, 1989 in Burnham something, an inn. He spent most of his childhood in Linz, the capital of Upper Austria. Later on, he states that it was his favorite city and he wished to be buried there. His father died in 1903. Hitler was about 14. He also happened to dislike his father a little bit. Then, about 4 or 5 years later, his mother died in 1907. He never got beyond a secondary education, but he did want to become an artist. And he actually applied to the Academy of Fine Arts twice, but he failed both times. But he did make a living by painting things like postcards, but he later moved to Munich in 1913. Some of his life is it's suspected that his possessive jealousy drove his niece to suicide in September of 1931. Eva Bruin became his mistress and later wife, but he didn't marry her until the end of his life. But after he moved to Munich, I don't remember if it was right after he moved or a few years or whatever later, but he applied for military service but was considered unfit when he finished the testing thing they do. But he petitioned, during World War I, he petitioned the Bavarian king, Louis III, to let him serve in World War I. He was allowed to serve in the 16th Bavarian Reserve Infantry Regiment and was deployed to Berlin in October 1914. He was injured a total of twice, if I remember correctly, during that war. Once in one battle, and then later he was gassed and blinded temporarily. In Ypres, 1918, he was continually on the front lines as a headquarters runner and was awarded for his bravery later by getting the Iron Cross Second Class, December 1914. And then later he got the Iron Cross First Class in August of 1918. And he thought his life was better than his life was as a civilian. But after the war, lots of resentment and things like that happened, and he took up political work in Munich May through June of 1919. He joined the small German Workers' Party, and in 1920 he was put in charge of their propaganda. He left the army later to improve his position in the party, and later that same year the party changed names to the National Socialist something, shortened, that's Nazi. And the swastika is actually an ancient sacred symbol of Hinduism, Jainism, and Buddhism. Conditions were ripe for the party's development, and in March 1920, a small coup d'etat was attempted by a few army officers, but it was in vain. He became the leader of the party in July 1921 and then went to prison for treason for 9 months after he started a rebellion. It didn't go very well, but it did gain him national, people around the nation knew him now because of this. While he's in prison, he wrote Mein Kampf, and Hitler thought the Jews were the greatest enemy of Germany at that time. After he was released, he was forbidden from giving speeches, and on January 30th, 1933, he was given the Chancellorship of Germany. He established an absolute dictatorship once in power, and Nazis had 43.9% of votes on March 5th of 1933. On June of 1929, 1934, Ernst Röhm was executed without trial, along with a few other people that were higher ranking. Made a system that prevented one person from having enough power to challenge him. He saw France as a natural ally, and on September 1st, 1939, Hitler invaded Poland. He said the Munich Agreement was his last territorial demand in Europe. Now, going on into World War II, the strategy was assumed by Hitler, and they reached the Channel ports in 10 days, which Germany could not accomplish in World War I. Holland and Belgium surrendered within 16 days, and I believe Holland surrendered in 4. But in total, it was within 16 days. He had hoped Britain would agree to an armistice, but when Britain didn't agree to the armistice, he started planning the invasion of Britain. On June 22nd, 1941, he invaded the Soviet Union, and it lasted until December 6, 1941, which was when a Russian counteroffensive stopped Hitler. Then, the next day, December 7th, 1941, that date might sound familiar. And if so, that's because that was the day Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. And due to the alliance between Japan and Germany, Germany had to declare war on America at the time. Originally, it's this going back in time a little bit from where we're actually at in terms of going in order or whatever of dates. But originally, Hitler didn't plan on killing the Jews. But the plans changed to kill them in 1941, which was when concentration camps were expanded to extermination camps, similar to Auschwitz. Then, there were also mobile extermination squads like Instagrafen. I could have butchered that name. But Jews were not the only victims of World War II concentration camp stuff. Other groups affected were Catholics, homosexuals, disabled people, Poles, and Gypsies. America's landing in French North America was a big turning point of the war. And as the war went on, Hitler grew ill. And there were many attempts on his life. Some were more successful, some were closer to being successful than others, but none were successful. Midnight, April 28th through the 29th, Hitler married Eva Braun and appointed Admiral Karl Dönitz as head of state and Joseph Goebbels as chancellor. And then on April 30th, he was in his suit and he shot himself, and his wife took poison. But before he died, he requested that both him and his wife's bodies were burned. It's largely considered that Hitler, while ruling Germany, destroyed much of what people considered to be old Europe. And 1945 is what a lot of people in Germany later started to refer to as Year Zero. But that's really all I have to say about the whole thing, so it was fun. See you later.